In a 2021 Velvet Underground documentary, John Cale said that there was a standard they set for their music to sound elegant and brutal. Charli XCX took those words to heart. The sentiment of the music sounding elegant and brutal was the birth of House, one of the two latest singles by Charli XCX, a track that is elegant and brutal in every sense of the word, featuring a spoken word poem by John Cale of Velvet Underground. It's a part of Charli XCX's upcoming soundtrack album for Emerald Fennell's upcoming film adaptation of Wuthering Heights, based on the 1847 novel originally written by Emily Bronte. It's a dark, gothic story about two people, Catherine and Heathcliff, from different social classes that fall profoundly in love, but become extremely obsessive and self-destructive. They live in complete dependence of each other. There's been several film and TV adaptations of this book over the last century, with this upcoming movie being the latest. They become trapped in a vicious cycle of love, betrayal, and revenge that leads them to destroy one another, the people around them, and ultimately themselves. When I heard that Charli was going to be a part of the soundtrack for it, I was intrigued, but also a bit perplexed. How was Charli XCX, an artist synonymous with making hyperpop bangers, who just made an album with songs about doing coke and going to the club and guessing the color of her underwear, gonna make something that remotely fits the mood of a gloomy, eerie, haunting, desolate, depressing narrative set in the 18th to 19th century Victorian era? Upon further research of Emerald Fennell's adaptation of the story, I found that while her version will keep true to the roots of a destructive relationship between the two that becomes consumed by obsession and revenge, it's not going to be so focused on the desolate and depressing aspect of the story. Her version instead aims to be more, sexualized, to say the least, to focus on the intense desire aspect and have a more modern gothic flair to it, much to the dislike of fans of the original, but that's a whole nother thing. With that in mind, okay, that does make perfect sense, because when I think of music that sounds both extremely modern and sexy, Charli is the first name that comes to mind. It must have been for Emerald Fennell as well. She called Charli last Christmas and asked her if she would consider working on a song for her adaptation of the story. When Charli read the script, she immediately felt inspired, so her and Finn Keen began working on a song that ended up turning into several songs that they felt connected to the world she was creating. While on tour in Austin, her and Finn wrote the bones of what would eventually become House. That elegant and brutal phrase became ingrained in her head during the process. By the end of the summer, Charli decided to reach out to John Cale himself to get his opinions on the songs that were so deeply inspired by his words. They spoke on the phone, specifically about House, and they talked about the idea of adding a poem. He recorded it, sent it back to her, and they made her cry. House starts with John Cale reciting this very poem. Immediately, it feels eerily intimate and directly addressed to the listener. His voice sounds haunting, accompanied by a screeching two-note violin, and then some other layered string instruments that all set a foreboding and ritualistic atmosphere. It doesn't feel like the beginning of a song. It feels like the beginning of a seance. He questions his reality in this ominous opening monologue that feels like it's coming from a soul trapped in purgatory, who is making a confession while going through an episode of psychosis. He no longer knows who or what he is, now just a prisoner to live for eternity. He's completely lost himself in this endless search for some kind of perfection, whether that be a perfect place, a perfect beauty, a perfect love, a perfect ideal, a perfect artistic vision, something perfect. But this perfection is idealized and ultimately unattainable. When it doesn't live up to expectations, his whole idealization breaks down. He thought it would be perfect. He wants it to be perfect. He pleads, let it be perfect. But the reality is, it just isn't. The repetition of the word perfect in this line is conveying how useless it is, desperately trying to preserve the idea of it. He's stuck contemplating if his obsession with seeking perfection is what created the very prison he inhabits. That's what the house is, a prison. the prison of his own mind. Being trapped inside of it has led to feeling like he now has an inescapable fate to be doomed to complete isolation, doomed to suffer alone for eternity in this house, literally and metaphorically. It's gotten to the point where the house has consumed his reality completely. He no longer recalls anything outside of its walls. It feels like another confined world entirely. That's literally the definition of depression. In the very last line of the poem, he says, "If it's beauty, do you see beauty? If there's beauty, say it's enough." It's a final moment of exhaustion and powerlessness. He questions whether achieving this idealism can rationalize that chasing it has caused his inner torment, and whether that validation will mean anything, whether it will even be enough. In reflection to Wuthering Heights, Catherine and Heathcliff completely lose themselves in a toxic, all-consuming obsession with each other that they mistake as true love. They both cling to this illusion of a perfect and idealized love, one in which they share the same soul and are bound to eternal union. They are in love on a spiritual level. In reality, their relationship is extremely dysfunctional, unequal, possessive, codependent, and fueled by destructive behaviors like jealousy, manipulation, and psychological abuse. All of this toxicity becomes glaringly apparent when Catherine chooses to conventionally marry Edgar Linton due to his higher social status. His idealization of love completely spirals, leading Heathcliff to feel betrayed, and causing him to become hell-bent on chasing revenge against her and her family for decades, to the point where it causes severe family estrangement across 2 generations. In the end, after all of this, the years of tormenting Catherine's family brought him no inner peace. Achieving revenge against them brought him no happiness. Catherine long since passed away years ago due to an illness. He drove everyone else away, and he is now completely isolated, alone, descending into madness. He stops eating properly, stops sleeping properly, and starts seeing visions of her ghost haunting him. His obsession with seeking revenge led him to creating his own self-imprisonment, and he's very much aware that it will be his demise. While reflecting the plot of the original story very well, John's poem also parallels Charli's own career even more so, post the phenomenal amount of success that Brat brought it. She recently stated that while there's an influx of joy and passion and vitality in creating an album, there is naturally a feeling of emptiness that follows once it's out in the world. By the end of the process, she felt like she was squeezing blood from a stone. She was left feeling stuck, empty, and barren, like she was running on the spot in a different kind of way. By creating something so massive culturally, she ended up creating her own prison. It was exhilarating to make something so massive, but doing so just left her desiring more progress, despite already feeling so depleted. It's the aftermath of ambition, and how achieving success can lead to an entire new form of isolation. Both Charli and John come in with the chorus, repeated hypnotic whimpers of, "I think I'm gonna die in this house," feeling as if the thought begins to engulf their mind. The instrumental and Charli's vocals explode into loud, distorted, glitchy screams of the words, like the walls of the house are caving in, completely suffocating her. It's a cathartic climax of the entire track, but it's not sung with the same kind of fear of this fate, but rather with acceptance of it. Whether the house is a prison, another world, a relationship, an inner torment that can't be escaped, or a literal haunted house that they are trapped and have become isolated in, the line becomes a confession that staying in it will be her demise. It's a realization that it's inevitable. She croaks out one last utterance of, "I think I'm gonna die in this house." That feels like it was her last gasp for release. And with that, she really did die in that house. Or at least, some part of her did. In the final line of the song, John Cale says the phrase, "In every room, I hear silence." The lasting, permanent, crushing weight of absence is one of the defining themes of Wuthering Heights. It's what drives everything about the story. The rooms inside the house represent the beauty, the perfection, the art, all of which are now void, absent. A place that was thought to be perfect and beautiful is in reality completely cold and empty. The final line is a terrifying acceptance that there's nothing. In both the opening and concluding scene of the music video, we see Charli going into the distance through a dark woods, wearing a white dress instead of the black dress. I feel like this symbolizes that through this track, she became reborn in a sense, as if it was an exorcism, and a part of her did die in that house. But it needed to. That's what allowed her creative spirit to be free again. Charli made it clear that whatever she was going to create post-Brat was going to be inherently different than anything she's done. The result was something that's downright unnerving, unsettling, and disorienting, and a soundscape I truly would have never imagined her taking on, let alone flawlessly nailing it. Inspired by a phrase that said that the music needed to sound elegant and brutal. Charli XCX and John Cale's collaboration, sonically, visually, artistically, provides nothing less than that.